I'm Tyler Anthony. I'm so proud to be back with you again for PEPCO's third year as a presenting sponsor of this important summit. Thank you to the American Red Cross of the National Capital and Greater Chesapeake region for bringing together the people who provide essential services and support to our communities across the Washington metropolitan area. We've proudly partnered with the American Red Cross for more than 50 years, and our Senior Vice President of Governmental and External Affairs, Melissa Lavinson, currently serves on the board. We truly consider it a privilege to share the day with you. Since we last came together, we've dealt with many challenging events across our nation and the world. Social unrest in many of our cities following the killings of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Rayshard Brooks, and unfortunately other unarmed African Americans. The violent attack on our Capitol. The continued effects of climate change and severe weather events, and a pandemic that has taken lives of more than 500,000 people in the United States. At PEPCO and throughout the Exelon family of companies like you, we spend a lot of time thinking about and planning for emergencies and disasters, but we could not have expected a year like this. While we unfortunately have had to put our plans and skills to the test, we know that without them and without partnerships with organizations like the Red Cross and those participating here today, the effects would be more significant and recovery would be more challenging. The people in our region depend on us. They trust us to be ready. Let's use our time today to honor that trust, learn from one another, and prepare our community for any situation. On behalf of PEPCO, I want to again thank the Red Cross for bringing us together for this critical discussion. We look forward to the stronger partnerships that will result from today's work. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tony Ruffin, and I serve as Governmental and External Affairs Manager for PEPCO, the electric utility provider of the Washington metropolitan area, which serves more than 890,000 residential and commercial customers. I hope you have enjoyed today's summit. I'm so honored to introduce today's closing speaker, Lieutenant General Russell Honore. As you can imagine, we needed someone with substantial experience, perspective, and wisdom to help us wrap up all that we've heard and learned today, and someone to move us forward with commitments to take action in the future. Our planning committee could think of no one more exemplary than Lieutenant General Honore. You can read all about him on his biography, which is posted on our website, but I'd like to highlight a few of his key accomplishments of his 37-year distinguished career. Prior to his command of Joint Task Force Katrina, Lieutenant General Honore served in a variety of command and staff positions which focused on defense support to civil authorities and homeland defense. For 4 of the past 6 hurricane seasons, he supported the U.S. Department of Defense's planning and response. Lieutenant General Honore also planned and supported the United States military response to the devastating flooding which swept Venezuela in 1999 and Mozambique in the year 2000. As Vice Director for Operations, he led the Defense Department's planning and preparation for the anticipated Y2K millennium anomaly. As commander of the Standing Joint Force Headquarters for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, he also planned and oversaw the military response to the Space Shuttle Columbia tragedy and the DC sniper shootings. Additionally, Lieutenant General Honore participated in 3 top officials exercises, as well as the United Endeavor series of Homeland Defense exercises. Throughout his illustrious career, Lieutenant General Honore has received many awards and accolades, which include the Defense Distinguished Service Medal and the Defense Superior Service Medal, just to name a few. Lieutenant General Honore retired from U.S. Army active duty in February of 2008, and he continues to speak and consult nationally on building a culture of preparedness. It is my great honor and pleasure to welcome Lieutenant General Russell Honore.
Well, hello, fellow Red Crosses. It's an honor to be with you today. I sneaked in the chat rooms on the working groups and were able to listen to the first responders. And I heard a part of what you were talking with Marcy Roth and others on the vulnerable population. It's an honor to be here with you. What a year it has been in the this history we've been writing about the great nation. When we look at the role of the Red Cross, which started with Miss Clara Barton during the Civil War, and we moved up to the globalization of our Red Cross in the support that the Red Cross provided during the 1917 pandemic, as well as World War I, when the Red Cross was the go-to service with some 20,000 Red Crosses mobilized, trained as nurses to help care for our men and women fighting in World War I. Prior to the U.S. intervention, as the pandemic broke out, the Mercy ship, the first known Mercy ship, was manned with 170 doctors and nurses to go to World War I and to take care of survivors from both sides. Then as the U.S. entered the war, so did the spread of the epidemic, the then called Spanish flu. And we know the devastating impact it had. But at one time, the role of the Red Cross included 20 million adult volunteers and 10 million children who were members of the Red Cross. Why am I mentioning that? Because at the nation's big in need, the Red Cross provided public health nurses to public health departments across the country to care for those who were recovering from, as well as to try to keep people alive during the pandemic. And that volunteerism continued for years as they took care of those soldiers who returned from war from around World War I and went back home and had problems breathing, had problems after being attacked by gas, and problems associated recovering from the pandemic. So our Red Cross was exposed to most of Americans during and after World War I, during a pandemic. When we look at this last year, one must reflect on what are the big lessons learned. One of them come to me is the spirit of resilience of our nation, to be able to simultaneously deal with a devastating COVID-19 pandemic that's affecting the world, as well as what it exposed when we look at our population. That population that had gone into obscurity in our population, the essential workers, the people who kept the supply chain going, the people who kept the hospitals and the ambulances running, those essential workers and the role they played in trying to keep people alive as we struggle with a solution to deal with the pandemic. There were days when many of us questioned what we could do and how we could do it. But what never was questioned was the commitment of our health workers and our essential workers to keep the supply chain open and to expand our medical capacity to try to keep people alive. What a lesson in resilience. The other part that we took particular note of was the impact of the virus on the vulnerable population. That population that is generally underserved with medical as well as healthcare in their rural, isolated, poor communities. Much of the early deaths and those that did not survive the pandemic were from that vulnerable population, the elderly, the people in nursing homes and those in community that were underserved by medical support before the pandemic, it had a compounding impact. That's a lesson we will continue to prepare for in the future as I tell first responders dealing with natural disasters. You want to know where to go? Go circle the ring where the poor people live and where the vulnerable population live. That's where you go. You will go and there will be work to be done there to save lives. What a lesson in resiliency. What a lesson in, as we worked, the nation worked tirelessly to find a solution in terms of the vaccine, and what would have taken 4 or 5 years took a matter of months because of the evolution of the research that had been done over the past decade to break down the gene code associated with with the virus. That was a marvel of using computers and science to solve this issue associated with it. And by no means is this pandemic over with. Many of us are done with the pandemic, but the pandemic is not done with us. That being said, we've lost over 535,000 of our citizens. A lot of grandparents that would have been here for another decade are no longer here. They're not here. Over 535,000. And we just under 1,000 dying a day as of yesterday. At one time, when we heard that number of 1,000 dying last spring, most of us were in shock. And for the last 45 days, we went up to 3,000 to 4,000 dying a day. Now we can see the impact of the vaccine and good health practices, public health practices. And that number, as of this morning, was below 1,000 dead as of yesterday, dying each day from the pandemic. The other big lesson we learned is the value of virtual work. How do we know that things that kids used to play with and do birthday parties with would end up be a venue for how we get work done and how we adjust and work from home? How do we adjust and kids go to school at home? But that does not address the entire population, because in the vulnerable population, in the poor communities, many of them don't have the broadband to be able to use that method for schooling. But we can see the value. Even this talk today, I remember maybe in 2010, I was in Washington at Red Cross headquarters and spoke to a chapter meeting of the Capital Region, this Red Cross group. But we spoke, the event happened right in Red Cross headquarters in DC. Now we're able to do it virtually. All of us staying home, all of us engaged, all of us passing knowledge. And the great thing about the virtual workspace for knowledge workers, it is transparent to doing business. There is a big push by much of industry to want to reoccupy the office space, but I think the timing on that is going to be critical. It's got to be associated with what the workforce needs to navigate the end of school this year, because many of them are just starting back. We're going to have to navigate what summertime mean. Will there be summer camps for kids to go to, those who are raising children? Or should we stay status quo until everybody get their shot and try to reoccupy the offices when we reoccupy the schools in the fall? And those are business decisions that's got to be made, but it's got to be on the conversation right now of how we transition from where we are now to the next phase without overexposure of our workforce to go back the way we used to do business. There's an old saying running around here about how do we create the new normal? How we get back to the new normal? Well, the new normal wasn't good enough when we were using it. the optimization of technology. It wasn't working. Now we've seen a different way to perform tasks, how to work, how to communicate, how to accomplish things. And it takes a whole group of people, knowledge workers, that can continue to work virtually until we can get to that point where public health and science tell us it's time for us, we could transition back to the full football stadiums and the soccer fields and the baseball fields. That has to be worked out. The other thing that we've come to learn is the significant role of the federal government in orchestrating the response plan. We've seen it grow. We've seen great anticipation. We've seen innovation inside of states. We've seen some do it better than others. And I think we all can write a book about lessons we learned. But the big one for me is, how do we deal with this continuing pandemic? I can tell you, we had a big lesson in Louisiana. Just when we thought it couldn't get worse, we had 3 hurricanes come through here. 3 hurricanes that were devastating. Hurricane Laura being the most significant one. Then a few weeks later, another hurricane came through. This is unbelievable. Dealing with hurricane when over 80% of the people in Calcasieu Parish and in Cameron Parish are still evacuated out of their homes. It was devastating, but it speaks to the resiliency. It speaks to the role. I'm a member of the Louisiana Red Cross Board. I've been a Red Crosser since I left the Army. And most of them, the support staff, did this virtually with small groups of people on the ground, volunteers that were able to come in and provide those normal services that Red Cross provide on the front line, working with the parish officials to try and provide food and comfort. And the Red Cross in Louisiana was able to take over the housing with over 12,000 citizens displaced in hotels were run by the Red Cross. That's the capability, that's the big muscle that the Red Cross still performed for our nation. And we did it in the middle of a pandemic. Like those brothers and sisters during the aftermath of World War I, where we had 20 million adult volunteers, we're down to maybe 3 million volunteers a day, but they were forward, they made a difference, and they helped save people's lives here in Louisiana. In New Orleans, one of the highest hit pandemic areas in the state, but that's where the hotel rooms were, because we invented a new system. When you have a disaster, you can't put everybody in a school gym with no air conditioning. Thank God. I hope we never go back to school gyms and tent hotel rooms where families can be together. We have discovered a new way to take care of people. The Red Cross know how to do it. We've written the script. It's an honor to be here with you today. And I was sent a couple questions to address. Question number 1, what are the other public-private investments should the United States be making now against the next pandemic? Well, I think we need to create our public health institutions in each state. Over the last decade plus, many of our state public health departments have been destroyed because of budget cuts. My recommendation last year to the federal government and to the governors was to redesignate a battalion out of the National Guard in each state that would be the public health battalion, that would work continuously with public health in the state, with the public health corps out of HHS and with CDC, and they would train around the year. As opposed to training to go to war, there'd be remission as a public health battalion. And they would be citizen soldiers, and when needed, we could stand those battalions up. If a big state would get 500, a smaller state might get 200. But what a difference that could make in public health in response to hurricanes, in response to disasters, in response to wildfires, in response to volcanoes, because you know, folks, the disasters will not stop coming. I think that's a point of investment that should be made, is to create those public health battalions in each state. Why is preventing the next global disaster important to national security? It's important, folks, as we've seen with this pandemic. Right now, this pandemic is having an impact on manufacturing of key supplies and stuff we have come to rely on. We've got cars that have been built that cannot move because the chips supply system that comes out of primarily China has been slowed down because of the impact contributing to the pandemic. We must think anytime we have a pandemic, it will impact our national security. I want to thank all of you in the Red Cross, particularly in the Red Cross Capital Region. You are the closest to the capital. We need you to help beat feet over there and make sure that those committees that are creating policy, that are making sure that they understand the needs of the vulnerable population, the poor, and the essential workers. You know them, we're a part of them. They help save our nation, and the vulnerable population took the most sacrifice because they had the most deaths, particularly those in nursing home. We have to do better. There will be another pandemic. It's not if, it's when. It's good to be with you. Red Cross all the way. I'm with you. I'm a part of you. And I hope all of you continue to support Red Cross with the enthusiasm that you can. When you think you've done enough, go out and do some more and seek people around you that need help. We can be a part of the information cycle that help people get shots, and how you as a Red Crosser can touch people in your community to help them get shots, give them the science, and tell them where to go. God bless you. God bless the Red Cross. God bless America.
Please help us keep this conversation going and make our community as prepared as it can be. Before we conclude, I have a few more words about your American Red Cross. The mission of the Red Cross is to prevent and alleviate human suffering in the face of emergencies by mobilizing the power of volunteers and the generosity of donors. We wouldn't be able to carry out the mission without partnerships and engagement with you. I'd like to ask you all personally to help your Red Cross continue this mission. Continue it in a way that works for you. The Red Cross is dependent on people giving their time, money, and blood to deliver its mission for the community. Please donate on the links provided on the Summit website or at redcross.org. Many of you made contributions when you registered. Thank you. The Red Cross has an urgent need for blood and platelets to help life-saving medical treatments, especially during this pandemic. Visit redcrossblood.org to sign up. As I mentioned earlier, be on the lookout for a survey from us asking for your assessment and feedback about the summit. Videos of the speakers and panels will be available in the next few weeks at the redcross.org/DC Disaster Summit. And thank you again to all of our sponsors: Amazon Web Services, Pepco Holdings, Emergent Biosolutions, Leidos, Booz Allen Hamilton, the J. Willard and Alice S. Marriott Foundation, Guidehouse, KPMG, Inquisit, Deloitte, Avalon Bay Communities, Cisco Systems, Jim Schaefer and Dale Kopanek, AARP, Peraton, and Hogan Lovells US. And finally, thank you all for your time and being with us today. This is important work that can only be done together. Have a great day.